Hello, everyone, and welcome back to This Week in Solar. I'm your host, Aaron Nichols, the Research and Policy Specialist here at Exact Solar in Newtown, Pennsylvania. And today we are interviewing Pennsylvania solar royalty. Ron Celentano has been doing this for as long as anyone can remember. Your name comes up all the time. Ron, welcome to the show, and
Thank you.
Please tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, appreciate being here. Thank you very much. Yeah, I guess I always kind of start like, how long I've been doing solar for. So I go back to getting a CETA job, which is under the Carter administration back in the late 70s. And that was a program that President Carter had at the time before he got out of office, where you're coming out of college or your end of your undergrad college work, you would get into, and they would have monies available for you to work in the area of which your major was. So for me, it was solar. So I immediately started to work at the college, Stockton State College in southern Jersey, is where I started to work in the solar field because that was my focus anyway. And I worked there for about almost a year with that. So I kind of stuck with that. I'm still doing solar. But after that, I got into then doing some solar thermal installation work. And then Reagan came in and everything fell apart. So I went back to school. I went to grad school and got a master's in the field of mechanical engineering. My bachelor's was in physics. And after that, graduating there, I got into working in the demand side management world. So in the early 80s, it was starting to be the focus of how to, saving energy with energy efficiency technologies. And so we worked with this consulting group. I worked with Synergic Resources Corporation in just outside of Philadelphia, worked there for well over a decade, where some of the utilities, a lot of them in California, there was mandates for those utilities to have programs for energy efficiency and how to implement them. So we would do the development of what these different technologies were, lighting programs, commercial lighting, residential lighting, or maybe close storage. There was a lot of different types of technologies to look at. And I would do the modeling of those, kind of creating a baseline and then creating an efficient line. And you could do the difference, and you could basically look at the cost effectiveness of these and which would rank higher to ultimately become a program that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So then came around the later 90s. I already started to get focused back into solar at that time, and it was now photovoltaic. So that was kind of coming up. And about mid-90s, I think I started on my first PV project, and that was an interesting learning curve. It was like a lawyer asked me to help him work on some project, so I kind of learned it really quick, hands-on. There wasn't a whole lot of stuff out there to learn on, but you could buy these panels and batteries and whatever. So I started to work with that, and I guess going in, and then at the same time I was starting to get into some policy stuff, right. Learning what was going on in Pennsylvania and around the world. That's where I started to learn about net metering. This guy who's only probably us old guys would know, this guy Tom Stars, who was counsel. He was with IREC, the Interstate Renewable Energy Council. He was working there at the time, doing a lot of nonprofit work, for renewables basically, and he kind of came up with lots of these graphs of the different states that were doing net metering at the time. I picked up on reading about that, and I ended up talking with him. And this is all about the time when Pennsylvania was deregulating. So deregulation, where Pennsylvania shifted from basically having the utilities supplying you and in distribution you had to pay the whole bill. It was now you had a choice to choose your third-party supplier. You could buy your supply of generation, and that was all happening right at the end of the 90s, 98, 99. So that's as that was happening, and here I'm learning about net metering and solar. I was able to implement or really spearhead, I guess, that we included net metering in this new change. And PECO, which is the utility in the Philadelphia area, was the first one to deregulate, and it had a net metering tariff. Mm-hmm. So that's how net metering kind of started there. And it was basically, we helped kind of draft out what that meant. You can get the full value of your generation credited back off your bill. And it's interesting what's happened since then, because there's a lot of insanity that's happening now. At that time, it was put in that net metering language to say, well, hey, if you generated more than you consumed in a year's time, that annual excess, you would be valued at the price to compare. The price to compare is the generation or the supply rate, roughly, that you would get from your default supplier. So when you look at your bill, you see distribution costs and you see supply costs. So it's a supply cost part that you would get credited for that extra that you've generated. We didn't think much of it because at the time, solar was so expensive,
right,
and the rates were not particularly high. So who would ever oversupply or over-design their system?
Yeah.
And that was pretty much the case. Some did a little bit, but it was noise. It wasn't that big of a deal.
And this is still late 90s.
This is late 90s, and
okay.
well that was the beginning of that, and then it evolved so as the 90s continued on, all the other major utilities deregulated as well, went across the state, and by early 2000, we had eventually, had a net metering law that was in place as part of our alternate energy portfolio standard that was also kind of put in place. So
were you a part of implementing the APS?
Yeah, I was certainly part of coming up with the framework of it, if you will, and kind of definitely input into that. In fact, actually, I should say I was really part of the percentages that we had for the solar carve out. So back then, right? So the Ultimate Energy Portfolio Standard, similar to other states with their renewable portfolio standards or RPSs, Pennsylvania was the first one to throw a curveball into it and call it an alternative energy.
My whole presentation today was about that.
So it was like throwing some garbage stuff, along with the renewable. So that's where we had our tier 1 and our tier 2. The tier 2, except for it did include energy efficiency, which was a good thing.
So backing up a little bit, for anyone who doesn't have any context going into this conversation, why is Pennsylvania such a difficult state for renewable energy?
Well, first off, we were almost pretty much almost the leaders at that 2004 point when we did have our alternate energy portfolio standard in place.
Right.
New Jersey was just right around there as well, but we were ahead of the game. And that pretty much didn't get much better after that point.
Yeah, that's what the presentation was about today.
Yeah.
New Jersey continuously updates their standard.
Yeah,
Pennsylvania hasn't updated.
We have this graph that we show all the time. Not a graph; it depicts all the states right around, and all their goals are so much higher than ours. So we met our standard, back in 2021. We met our goals, I should say, and Tier 1 had a goal of 8% renewables, of which 0.5% was in-state solar, and then tier 2 is 10% of this other alternative energy. So we've met those goals back at that point. Interestingly enough, we still continue to increase our solar. We are now we're almost at we're over 2 gigawatts.
It's about half of what New Jersey has, but Pennsylvania has far more usable land, as you know, less population density, and still,
And also New Jersey's, their solar and renewables have really impacted, some of on those. I can't remember if it's 50. They've hit 50% of the time. We aren't even come close to that. So we're about almost 2% now solar right now in our state.
So why the difficulty? Why the resistance?
Part of it is we're a gas-driven state. We have natural gas. We have the fracking. And we have a lot of legislators that support that, and they want to keep driving that home. We have a Republican majority in the Senate. And even though we have 1 or 2 seats in the House, that's on the Democratic side, it's very hard to get things through. Even though we've had Democratic governors, a Democrat in the past, before with Governor Wolf and now with Governor Shapiro, it's hard for things to get really passed. We've crafted, I say we, some of our colleagues with PA's, the Pennsylvania Solar Center. Of course, I'm with the Pennsylvania Solar and Storage Industry Association under Mid-Atlantic Solar and Storage. We've kind of laid out different bills, got some legislators behind them, and we've tried many times. We've had several bills out there over the past 8 years, I guess, or more. Basically trying to push that APS, make a stronger case for it, and nothing's been really successful. The only thing that we've had in success has been closing the borders, and that was 7 years ago. So at the time, the solar, that 0.5% of solar could come from any of the 13 states within the PJM territory in DC. And what we worked very, very, very hard on was finally selling the fact, why should we be, as a ratepayer, subsidizing a project in North Carolina, and they install a system, and I'm paying for that. So we were able to even get a lot of Republicans on board with that. That doesn't make sense. So we effectively closed the borders, at least for that 0.5% of solar. So by the time our goals were met in 2021, it was pretty much that 0.5% was coming in from the state, or they still had contracts out of state that couldn't renew, and they eventually eventually ended up in our state.
So
that
it's just been hard to get them to come along unless there's something in it for them, or okay.
But we have quadrupled the amount since that 2021 mark. We have quadrupled the amount of solar that we have in the state of Pennsylvania. So it's the big puzzle for any of us has always been, even though our SREC price is relatively low, I think it is dropping to 20, maybe 25, maybe even less in SREC. It's surprising it's even that high, and it was up to 40 even last year. Yeah. How could it be as high as that when
there's no demand?
Saturated? Supply demand thing. We're well oversupplied. Yeah. So it's been puzzling how that's been working.
If anyone's listening and doesn't know what SRECs are, solar renewable energy credits. Yes. Yeah.
And that is, I always like to say, so that is kind of defined as, and the simple thing is you have solar on your roof and you're generating electricity, and that is reducing your electric bill. The electrons are slowing down the power coming from the grid, so you're actually reducing your electric bill. And simultaneously, though, you're generating these attributes, these green tags, if you will, from the solar that is under our law, under the APS, that it's a commodity for offsetting conventional power, and there's a value associated with that. So that is an additional revenue stream that you can get.
Right.
Yeah.
And in New Jersey, I mean, one of the reasons I was talking about in the presentation today is that New Jersey has a fixed price for SRECs for a fixed number of years. Yeah. So it makes investing much easier. Whereas in Pennsylvania, they're subject to supply and demand. Yeah. And there's very constrained supply. It also seems like the penalties for not investing in renewables in Pennsylvania are also more unclear than in New Jersey.
Yes, they're based on historical. So it was interesting at the time. I think we're the only state that may have had them. They were based on 200% of the historical, at least for solar it was, 200% of the historical average weighted price of whatever the price was. And that, by the way, what's interesting about that is that was if a utility did not purchase the SRECs that they were required to, because it was a growing percentage over time, right? And it was a percentage of their generation that they supplied to the state. So right now it's at that 0.5%. It stopped there, it leveled off, So we've already met our goal. So that means every utility, any generator, even like a third-party generator, has to still meet that requirement. So half of their percent of whatever they're supplying the state or anywhere within the state, they have to purchase the credits for meeting that amount
from an owner of a solar energy system.
Yeah, well, and it's usually through an aggregator. So I have solar, I sell my credit, I have a contract with an aggregator, and they record, and I get paid by them, but they in fact are the ones that sell it to the utility, but it's really a pass through because it comes back to all ratepayers have to reimburse the utility, so the utility doesn't really pay for it. We all pay for it. Right. So that's where that goes. But just to clarify a little bit on where the penalty comes in. The penalty comes in if the utility, if there's enough solar out there and the utility decides not to purchase that amount, then they are penalized that 200% of the weighted value. Right. But if there isn't, this is what's unique about Pennsylvania, and it's actually a good thing. If there isn't enough solar out there, the utility can't buy that solar that's there. Ratepayers aren't obligated to basically get, I guess, pay for that loss that the utilities can't purchase. In other states, that's not the case. I learned a lot of other states, if there is not enough supply out there for the utility to purchase as a requirement, the ratepayers still have to pay up for that penalty price. Right. But at least ratepayers don't have to do that in Pennsylvania. So that's a good thing.
Okay. So it seems to me that when we're advocating for state level policies, because I know that someone said that 70%, someone in a panel today at this conference said that 70% of the, I think, locked in carbon reduction has come from state level policies and incentives. So it seems to me when we're pushing for state policy, if it really is that impactful and federal is only 30%, we need clear goals and we need clear penalties for not meeting those goals.
And these new bills that we've had out there, they have been clear. They have been, I forget what it was, based on a dollar per credit, if you will. So we did have penalties in there, hardcore penalties. So that was very clear. And that also helps dictate a little bit of what that price might be, in the marketplace. So
right.
That's a kind of a good thing. It could be $45, as rec or credit, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So we were getting away from the historical. What was good about the historical, though, was interesting, was it kind of gave us feedback on what was that market rate going at, because it wasn't influenced by this hard penalty fee,
right.
penalty level. So you actually saw the natural development of that, and you could see over the years. You could look at over 20 years, and you could see how that price really kind of moves up and down. It used to be like well over I think it was 400. Actually, it was 200%. So it was like $600. I mean, back in the early parts of the 2010s and 2014s, it was really, really crazy high. Yeah, so what happened, I think, too, and so we had our Sunshine program, which was around 2011 through 14, around there. So that was money that came out, $100 million to incentivize solar development, and you could see that we blew way past our requirements, and then the monies ran out, and we saturated the market, and the SREC crashed, and it went from like $300 down to a point of $5.
Wow.
So it really took a nasty dive, and it stayed down there for a while, and slowly kind of creeped up. And
so the thing that controls the SREC market is a requirement for utilities to buy a certain percentage of solar.
Yeah, it tends to. Well, it certainly helps with planning, forecasting, and having a goal out there. But like I said, here we have our 0.5%, yet we're 4 times that right now. So there's a natural, development of projects going in anyway. People just want it. It's helping maybe save bills, or you're able to sell power to other entities or whatever it might be.
That's one thing we've been talking to our customers a lot about, is, like regardless of incentives, the power prices are just going to keep going up. I mean, we just saw that the PJM auction came in again even higher than last year's, and next summer is going to raise the bills in our region again.
So we have so many moving parts happening right now because, of course, the big beautiful bill, like, is kind of crashing down on all the tax credits, the fiat rules, and all these things are going to impact solar. But at the same time, we have other things that are maybe helping. We have the rates are continuing to go up, so that's going to still help the economics of maybe I should still do solar. Maybe I won't get the 30%, but maybe I should still do solar because it's going to help me reduce my bill. It's going to stabilize my bill for 20 years. I'm going to have a flat. That price isn't going to be changing. That part of the offset is going to be.
We've been saying smart shoppers buy in bulk.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like buying your energy in bulk for the next 20, 30 years.
And as you and it's also encouraged to oversize if you can, because hey, you're going to get that EV down the road, and that now you're moving it to the fuel cost. Has been coming in from PV and fixing that cost far cheaper than it is to buy it at the gas tank, or at the gas station. So it's going to have an impact there as well.
One thing I'm really interested in, because I came into this industry at a pretty rosy time. I came in 2023, late 2023. So a year of Inflation Reduction Act incentives, and then I've gone through my first cycle on the solar coaster of just and I think this has been an especially bad one, of throwing all of this energy and time at the policymakers and just being unheard. So I'm curious, as a young person coming into the industry who's now kind of having the baton passed to me, what advice do you have for just the energy that's needed to just bash your head against this rock?
Well, there's so many areas to get into. I mean, so this is all policy stuff. This is the stuff I don't get paid for at all. I mean, my work is more consulting, and I'm on the roof. I'm doing, all kinds of. I'm trained of, I do commissioning of projects. I design projects. I've done installations. I'm on the ground doing that stuff too. That's still going to be there, because what's going to happen now is not to be too discouraged. It's not going to shut down entirely. It's going to take a dip and go back up. In fact, it might be the ideal time to really learn more about, where you're going to focus in on let's say, in solar, because you have the time to do it, and there's not going to be so much competition for that for others,
Right.
But I think I was talking to Dara about this too, and others. There's only a couple of good things about all this. One good thing that was happening with this big beautiful bill thing is that, it's the customers that you're going to be dealing with are going to be much more pleasant to deal with. And this goes back to the early days when I was doing this back in the the early 2000s or 90s or whatever. People weren't just driven totally by economics. They wanted to do it for whatever reason. They want to be green. They want to reduce their electric bill, whatever.
I've also been saying there's the classic Americans can have something, and then someone tells us we can't have that thing anymore. That's a big part of it too.
Yeah, that too. It's where the left meets the right. I mean, they come together in this, but that's a common point. I mean, and I think when anything gets mainstream, it's not as much fun anymore, So we're kind of falling back to maybe that customer group that may be more desirable to hang out with, and you have a much better relationship. So there's that. The other thing that I think is really interesting is one thing that's been really a bummer about having the ITC, the federal tax credit, is I think we have this whole issue of what are we going to do with all these modules, these older modules coming down, where they're going to go, the landfill situation, can they be reused? And that's a whole nother market that's developing right now too. But the ITC basically, I think, accelerated those modules possibly going to landfills. And it's because you put in a system, 10 years, you got to redo the roof, the modules come off to get the roof done, and it's like, wait, why should I put these old things back up when I can get a federal tax credit with a new project? And they would throw it up there. So now you have these modules that have another good 10, 15 years life left, and you don't know if they can maybe end up in a landfill. So that was accelerating that. Now I'm thinking people are going to be like, put that old thing back up there because I can't afford to get a new system. Okay. So at least it will, maybe run its life a little bit longer throughout its, purpose.
And help lower the carbon footprint of the industry overall.
Yeah. So, we'll have to see. But, I just heard, I didn't catch all the numbers, but I mean, we are so behind. We're going to always be behind now. There's no way we can possibly be leaders again in the world because of what's happened right now. China, I heard, in the past year put in almost as much in 1 year than we have done in cumulative.
I heard about that.
It's like off the charts. So, I mean, we will never catch up to that.
Sure. Yeah.
But hey, we got to keep going along.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and it's gonna be a wild ride. I think ultimately it's gonna be an inconvenient, annoying few years.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna have a whiplash effect again because culture just kind of swings back and forth.
Exactly. It's gonna be happening. So I don't know. I'm not sure how much I should be getting into all right, maybe I should just leave this alone and do some things like travel and just because when you get older after a while you're like, why am I trying to keep climbing this mountain that I can never seem to get to the top of, because Pennsylvania has just been so difficult. It really has been an uphill battle continuously.
Yeah.
Just continuing. But there's
thank you for being out there and doing it. That's what I'm saying is that as someone who's just coming in, where do you find that wellspring of stubbornness?
Well, I'm not alone. There's so many other people that are out there doing it. In fact, for me, I team up. I have to team up with other folks, some of the enviros, but more so like Sharon Pillar with the PA Solar Center, Liz Robinson with the Philadelphia Solar Energy Association. There's different people that we work together. We have to work collectively because we all have our strengths, and that's really important for going forward and trying to keep the pressure on,
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Absolutely.
I should add to that. So one of the things that we recently were lucky, Representative Fiedler last year was able to get a Solar for Schools bill program, in which was like I said, we hadn't had anything get through for 7 years. So this was a real great accomplishment. $25 million for schools, put solar in schools, and there was one of the departments basically had to come up with that program in an incredibly short time, I think 2 months or something, which is a record. They don't move that fast, but we were able to give some guidance as well, and with how they can kind of formulate that. They put it in place. It was implemented, and you had to do assessments for those schools. I did some of them. If you were an assessor or did a feasibility study, you then couldn't be also bidding on the project. So that was fine. So I was doing that. I was doing that for me. I did that for some Generation 180. And so anyway, there were 74, I think, school districts, I believe, that were awarded, monies for that. And now everyone has to kind of write up these RFPs for them to go solicit installers. But here we weren't expecting the ITC to be, actually I should take that back. The ITC is still there for the schools. The elective pay for nonprofits never fell off, is still in play, I should say.
Yeah.
So that's actually a surprising thing that I don't know why that didn't get yet pulled out.
Yeah. But it will expire as soon as the ITC for commercial entities expires, right?
I don't think so. No.
But it wouldn't be tied to anything. So why would it still be there?
There's nothing. Well, you're right. Well, you're right. I mean, right. So when that's going to be ending out 2027, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So that's good. You're right. That part's going to be the issue. But there's also the FIAC issue that might be affecting that. So,
right.
It's a foreign. Some of the components that might be from like China or whatever, they could contaminate you not being able to get 30%. So
yeah.
But anyway, so it's good that's still there, but it's making the schools very nervous, because they
right.
need to know that they're going to get that.
Of course.
And if they don't, so they would get, and they're getting the stacked, the ITC, the 30, maybe there's a domestic adder or not, as well as the percentage for it's either 30, 40, or 50% of the up to $300,000, $400,000, or $500,000. That's going to be, so they're getting like an amazing deal. I mean, getting down to a quarter of the cost or something like that.
Yeah.
It's really great. So we'll have to see what's going to happen.
So as people working in the industry, installers and otherwise, what can we do in this new world without incentives to make sure that we're moving forward in the right way?
Well, one thing the other good thing about this is, I guess, we've been hearing a lot, and we heard a lot today, about, particularly in Texas, but I'm sure it's everywhere, on the scammers out there. Not so much they were scammers, but they're just really the bad actors of those solar companies that would sell a customer on doing solar. Maybe they would start to install the thing, and then they leave, they disappear, and right. It doesn't get connected. They may have not even put an interconnection application in. So they're holding the bag, and they got it. So those guys are probably gonna. I don't think they'll be around so much. So that's gonna help, I think, the quality solids that are out there. So that'll be a plus. But it is going to be a rebuilding of some trust, because those guys were there and they were doing some bad deals. So. I don't know. It's the residential market, at least initially, the residential market is going to be the hardest one hit, because of that's stopping at 12, 31, 20, 25,
The 30% incentive stopping at the end of the year.
Exactly. And then after that, it's going to be then the commercial. All we can bank on is the rates, continue to go up. It's kind of odd, but we want those rates to go up, and that's going to be happening because of the data centers and everything else coming on board, and even electrification. It's hard for me to think of, the only reason why you're going to want it to electrify, like changing my, gas furnace to a heat pump or something like that. Hey, I'm going to see a higher bill. Well, I want to have solar that's going to offset that bill.
Yeah.
So that's going to be an important thing.
All right.
So I don't know what to say. Just
hang
in there, man. You gotta hang in there. Hate to see any of these good guys being just walking away and changing their career path, because it's going to come back. It's going to just have to just be patient and just hang in there.
Well, just to bring it home, I've got a fun kind of moonshot question I've been ending every episode with. So this has to do with the fact that I spoke at my grandma's 80th birthday party in June.
Okay.
And I was sitting there writing a LinkedIn post about it afterwards, and I realized I was like 80 years. So she was born 10 years after the Rural Electrification Act.
Okay.
This woman was born into a world where renewable energy didn't exist.
Okay.
Windmills would pump water.
Yeah.
I don't even know if they could generate electricity back then, but solar PV wasn't even invented till 1954.
Yeah.
And then you go on. Carter puts solar thermal on the White House in 79. And then all the stuff that's happened this millennium in the last 25 years, that's all been within her lifetime, going from that super high price per watt down to where we are now. And all the drama of the solar coaster is barely even 2/3 of her life.
Right.
So this is just a fun moonshot question, and no one will be able to hold us to the answer because we'll both be long gone. But what does clean energy look like in 80 years? What's your prediction?
Well, I can't imagine it's going to really be solar as we know it today. because I just think we're going to be evolving past that technology, and there might be another means. Well, first off, solar is clearly going to be the dominant energy provider. There's no question about it. I was talking to Richard Perez about this too, and it came out of New York Times as well. I mean, there's no way that solar cannot. And there's just such an enormous vastness, and because the price is coming down. But maybe it's the way that solar is provided and transferred over into energy. So that's going to be one of our means. The other is, I think we're going to be able to be tapping like sort of geothermal electric, production. They're taking advantage of the fracking industry, which some of us have some issues about that. Well, now you can take advantage of the fracking as a way to drill down, going down far enough, pulling up some of that hot, water that can come up and run turbines and generate electricity. Yeah. So there'll be some of those things I think going on, and I guess just more and more energy efficiency. So there's going to be requiring less usage supposedly. So I don't know. It's still probably going to happen way before that. Yeah. Was it 80 years? Is that or
80 years?
80 years.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine what. Yeah, or we're going to be on Mars. I mean,
we might not even be here anymore. I'm hoping we can just paint solar on.
Well,
wherever.
But that has happened. I mean, years ago, 20 years ago, that was already
really?
happening. Oh yeah. They came up with a method, thin film, basically, that you'd be able to paint surfaces. Now the efficiency was horrible. It was like very, very crappy efficiency. But then that was always an interesting school of thought. Like, do I want the most efficient module, or do I paint everything? And who cares if it's crappy efficiency, because I have so much surface area I'm generating power.
You just paint my whole house.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Now that technology is actually already there. But it's just not as commercialized. That's for sure.
Wow.
So yeah. Oh yeah. There's all wild stuff going on.
Ron, thank you so much. Where can people find you if they want to?
I'm right here. I'm going to be here all the rest of my life for 80 years. I live in Windmore, which is just outside of Philadelphia.
Or online.
Online, yeah. So it's ironically, I'm probably one of the few 5 people that have still an AOL email address. We have a very small party every year. So it's CELENTANOR@AOL.com. Or my cell 215-740-0439. So I'm available for whatever.
All right. Thank you so much.